Good evening, and welcome to tonight's April 12th, 2023 Shrewsbury School Committee meeting. My name is Lindsay Heffernan. I am the current chair of the school committee. First off, I'd like to, as always, thank Liz Popolowski and the members of Shrewsbury Media Connection for both recording and live broadcasting this event. It will be rebroadcast on Channel 29 between now and our next regular meeting on which is on April 26th, and also available on the SMC YouTube channel. The first item on our agenda is public participation. Nobody has asked to address the committee this evening, but should somebody like to address us, they may reach out to the chair prior to the beginning of the meeting. And once recognized, individuals can have up to 3 minutes to present their material. The committee, of course, will also review and consider any written comments or emails which may be presented to us before or after any meetings. Next item on our agenda is chairperson and members' reports. Do we have anything for anyone? No. I also do not have anything, so I'll move right along to superintendent's report. Dr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Ms. Heffernan. I recently sent a superintendent's update out to the community, and I just wanted to recognize a couple of things that happened recently. First off, that Oak Middle School last week had a career awareness day for our 7th graders. It involved really scores of people. It was a packed house in the Oak Middle School Media Center with volunteers from so many different types of professions and jobs from across central Massachusetts. Several Shrewsbury alumni were there to present, as well as community members. The students were terrific. Really want to thank Dr. Lazat, Kathleen Cohane, and the staff at Oak Middle School who arranged for that day to happen. Our 7th graders were very attentive, taking notes, asking questions. They could choose 2 different sessions to go to. So people who came did 2 different presentations for 2 different groups of students. And many of the students even dressed up in their business attire to make it even more meaningful. So it was a really great program. We appreciate everyone who gave their time and talent to make that happen. I also wanted to congratulate our middle school level unified basketball team. They had a culminating event we have 2 teams because we have so much interest in the program, the blue team and the gold team, and they faced off against each other last week. It was a wonderful event. It was actually held at the Shrewsbury High School Fieldhouse because we found out last year that the Oak Gym, there was so much interest that we had a much larger crowd than we would accommodate there, and it was an even bigger crowd this year, we believe. But again, everyone involved with the unified program did an outstanding job, and the athletes from both Sherwood and Oak were terrific, and we appreciate the support. And we'll have a report at a future meeting, actually, that Mr. Ponticelli, who's one of the coaches, is going to present some information in an upcoming meeting, so stay tuned for that. And the other thing I would recognize, we're going to recognize anyway, so I will finish superintendent's report, and we can move on to our student recognition of some wonderful, talented musicians from Oak Middle School.
Excellent. Happy then to move on to our first time scheduled appointment, and that is recognition of our middle school select music performance group. So it does a little background here. Oak Middle School students recently participated in the Massachusetts Instrumental and Choral Conductors Association, MICCA, Music Concert Festival. Before I continue, they've had many accolades of a whole variety and sort. I understand a couple of the faculty are here, and I'd really rather more hear from you than me read off what this is. And so can I turn it over to you maybe to help introduce who we have here, but also tell us about why we have some really special students who've joined us, because they have quite a number of accomplishments to be proud of.
Sure. If it's okay, we have a couple of quick statements.
Absolutely.
Mr. Clark and I, and then we'll turn it over to the students.
Perfect. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Ugoloro. I'm the middle school band director, grades 5 to 8, and general music teacher. And the middle school select band, chorus, and orchestra are comprised of talented musicians who represent the core values of our school community through their hard work and dedication to their craft. Mr. Clark, Mr. Lennox, and I want to thank you for having us here tonight to recognize the members of the middle school select ensembles for their recent success at the MICA Festival. We'd also like to express our appreciation specifically to Mr. O'Toole, Ms. Burak, Mr. Kelly, the Central Office Administration, and the School Committee for your ongoing support of the music and theater programs in Shrewsbury. The classes we're able to offer during and after school allow our students the opportunity to participate in meaningful activities that promote creativity and striving for the highest while fostering a sense of belonging. That's very important to all of us in the schools. Mr. Clark?
And I'm Brian Clark. I'm the 5 through 8 choral director in Shrewsbury. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the recent festival we just attended with these students. The Massachusetts Instrumental and Choral Conductors Association hosts a yearly concert and choral festival at 8 sites across Massachusetts. The purpose of the festival is to encourage the improvement of an ensemble's musical standards by providing musical evaluation by highly qualified, regionally and nationally known adjudicators. Groups that participate must prepare the 3 selections that are evaluated using a rubric of 9 standards. Feedback from each judge is offered through recordings with comments and score sheets. In addition, each group participates in a half-hour clinic given by one of the 3 judges who evaluated the group. A total of 232 ensembles participated in this year's MICA Festival, with only 52 of them receiving gold medals. We are very pleased with the results we received and are excited to announce that the Select Chorus and Select Orchestra will be performing at the MICA Gold Medal Showcase at Mechanics Hall in Worcester this Sunday, April 16th. The Select Choir performs at 2 o'clock and the orchestra performs at 4 o'clock. Both performances are free and open to the public. And now we'd like to introduce some of our students, or have them introduce themselves and tell us what they do at our schools.
Sure. Thank you.
My name is Casey Crosby, and I play in the Select Band as the first chair trombonist. I am in 8th grade. I was originally introduced by to Select Band by my sister, who was a trumpet player that played in the Select Band a few years prior. I was originally hesitant because I wasn't sure I was up to the challenge, but she convinced me, and I have not regretted joining. Over the past 2 years of being in Select Band, I have noticed a significant growth in my playing. More challenging pieces have taught me how to better sight read music and to pay more attention to dynamics and articulations. I've also become more confident in leading in my section. I was also introduced to new music and met people in various grades that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And it's just a lot of fun to play as a team and listen to music that I almost never hear anywhere else.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
My name is Pratham Pai, and I'm a percussionist at Oak Middle School Select Band. I am proud to be part of the Select Band for the past 2 years. Select Band is a group of 45 to 50 talented, hardworking musicians who have been selected based on their performances in the audition. Select Band meets every Thursday from 2:30 to 5, and we follow a specific schedule. This includes warm-ups, which help us improve our tone quality as young musicians, practicing musical pieces for upcoming events, break time, which benefits us and helps us reset our minds, fix problems, or make minor or major adjustments to our practice, and finally ending the practice with a review of the musical pieces we just practiced. We have 4 concerts each year: the January concert, MICA preview, MICA, and also the recruiting concert, where we perform in front of incoming 5th graders, which gives them a live view of the different instruments they can choose from, mostly percussionists. Being in the Select Band group makes me feel that I matter and everyone makes a difference as a team. In other words, we succeed as one and fall as one. Most importantly, we play musical pieces that are more complex than others, which is something I am very proud about. Some successful moments we have had are earning a silver medal at MICA and successfully playing a song and pushing through even if we make a mistake. The benefits of performing in the MICA Festival are learning how to overcome fear and how to deal with anxiety while performing in a large audience. A challenge that I have faced as a member of the ensemble is adapting to acoustics and tone quality while performing in a new place. At MICA, we have a clinic with judges who give us important information on how we can improve next year. This benefits us as young musicians and helps us improve the next year. Some of the best moments I have had at the Micah Festival and with the Select Band are playing different songs with the Select Band each year and making really good friends. Most of all, Select Band has helped me grow as a musician and build confidence. Lastly, this wouldn't have been possible without Mr. Yu. Thank you, Mr. Yu, for bringing the best in us and being a great mentor. Thank you, school committee, for having me here to share.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Jane McCabe. I'm an 8th grader, and I'm a soprano in the Select Choir. Joining Select Choir 2 years ago has been the most fun experience I've had. I want to thank Mr. Clark. He's been a great choir teacher for the past 4 years. Being part of a Select Choir is like a family. You are able to fail and succeed as one, and it's really awesome because you kind of have instant friends that you connect with, you can talk to about anything relating to choir. At Micah, we were able to get a gold medal, which was really awesome, and we get to perform at Mechanics Hall this Sunday. It's been just a great experience to be able to sing with a bunch of talented musicians, and yeah, it's been a great experience.
My name is Grandma Porto. I'm in 7th grade, and I'm part of the Oak Select Choir, and I feel that it's really awesome to be able to be a part of this group of people who are all working towards the goal of being able to perform at the concert and being able to hear all the progress we've made from when we first learned the music to when we finally perform it, and hearing all the change and how we've improved. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you want to say anything before? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Go ahead.
Good. All right.
Hello, my name is Cecilia, and this is the OMS Honors Quartet. I play cello and currently act as the OMS Orchestra President. These are some of my most talented friends: Anna on the viola, Angelina on the second violin, and Anya on the first. And we are so happy to be able to showcase one of our favorite jazzy pieces from the school selection tonight. It's called Blue Rhythmico. Throughout the course of the year, we've seen so much growth in the Oak Orchestra program, both individually and as an ensemble, as a result of relentless private practice and the help of our conductor, Mr. Lennox, who has assisted us every step of the way, though he could not be here tonight. Orchestra can be uniquely challenging because of the construction of our instruments. Because we don't have frets, just a millimeter of displacement of our finger can cause our instruments to sound completely out of tune, and managing that in a large group can be very challenging. However, due to all the hard work of the Select Orchestra families, we are absolutely ecstatic to win a gold medal at the Micah Festival at the beginning of the month. And we cannot wait to perform at Mechanics Hall this weekend. Not only was Select Orchestra able to learn a lot from the Micah experience and the clinic afterwards, but many of us enjoyed it very much as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for introducing the members of your quartet.
Awesome.
I feel like there's a performance coming next.
There is.
There is.
Do you have any questions for us, or would you like to do that before, after?
We let
or would
them
you-
let's let them do their thing.
Okay,
And then do some
perfect.
questions. Does that feel good?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Sure.
However you'd like. Are you standing? Are you sitting? Standing? Okay, and you're sitting. Yeah, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. James got it. She's gonna have to be our roadie now.
She could take over for Josh if he needs it. Maybe Sunday.
We're not used to standing ovations in school committee meetings. But very impressive, very impressive. Before we have some questions for you, if it's okay, we'll let our other young people who are here tonight. Yes. Are there other? No. Sorry. I didn't understand. Well, I don't know if you all couldn't see, but the smiles from the people behind you, the amount of pride that is in this room for all of you is incredibly huge. Why don't I turn it over to my colleagues and see if you have any questions or comments for any of the folks here? Please, Ms. Boucher. Ms. Fritz. Having a night.
Thank you. So impressive. I know. I grew up in Worcester, and my parents will come now. My children grow up here, and we'd go to events and musical thing, and every time they would be, we can't believe these are students, or middle school or high school students. And we're talking about the budget tonight, and one of the things we always want to make sure is that we have funding for arts. And when you talk about the teamwork, people tend to think teamwork is sports, but it's really not. It's in so many other areas. So you're all in teams, you're all working together, and these are skills that you're going to keep with you through everything that you do in life. So just incredibly proud of everything you've done and at the age that you're doing at. So thank you.
Yeah, congratulations to all that you've accomplished at this early age. I think it's important to recognize, too, that, you were introduced to some of these instruments back during the pandemic, right? I mean, we're talking fifth grade is when you're introduced to instruments, but it does speak to the strength of this program. I hear it in what you played and all that you accomplished through Micah. My son was a product of this music program and started as a percussionist in fifth grade, didn't want to continue, and I kept pushing him along. And now he's a junior at the Berklee College of Music, studying music business. So just really appreciative to especially the staff. I know Mr. Yu, Mr. Clark, Mr. O'Toole, the entire performing arts staff, and I'm very thankful for obvious reasons for the strength of this program. So congratulations to you all.
As someone with absolutely no musical talent, I'm impressed by anybody with any musical talent. So this is obviously an impressive performance. What you've achieved is impressive, but I want to echo what Ms. Fritz said. There's obviously an element of teamwork here. There's an element of communication and working together that's truly very impressive. So just kudos to you all.
I also just wanted to extend my congratulations. I know this was not an easy time to be musicians. I have two musicians at home, and Zoom lessons during the pandemic, and trying to be introduced to instruments virtually and so forth. So just congratulations, a tremendous accomplishment for all of you.
Yeah, we are incredibly proud to have you all with us tonight, and also what you tell us about how great this program is important for lots of other students to hear too, who are maybe trying to decide if this is a good path for them, and who maybe at times feel a little frustrated and need to get nudged to stay with it. But the managing of the anxiety of performance is a lifelong skill, and that we all could continue to work at. And so I want to thank all of you for sharing a little bit more of your stories about what makes this program exciting for you, and what makes it fun and make you feel like you have your team. But also a special thanks to those for performing this evening and sharing your talents, I'm like Mr. Palach. I don't have a lot of musical talent, so I am exceedingly impressed. And that we have a bunch of medal winners here too really is no doubt to me. The staff, really, thank you so much for all that you do. We hear just incredible things about the program, and I'm so happy we're able to continue to support it. Dr. Sawyer.
I really appreciate that we've, in addition to the band, chorus, and orchestra program, that these select groups have been created over the years, and I want to just congratulate all of you on your successes. For the band to have a silver medal and the choir and the orchestra to earn gold is really phenomenal. And I want to thank all of our student performers, of course, as well as Mr. Lennox, the orchestra teacher and conductor who could not be here this evening. Mr. Yu with the band, Mr. Clark with the chorus. I know that they really put their heart and soul into this work with their students, and it's really paying off. And I appreciated the comments from the students earlier about what this program has been meaning to you. We're very fortunate. Thank you for the leadership Mr. O'Toole brings to the department, all the support our principals. I know Mr. Kelly and Ms. Burak are here tonight from Sherwood and Oak to be supportive, and certainly we hope that you continue in our program, and one of the reasons we have a really strong high school program is because of the middle school program that comes before it. I'd also be remiss not to thank the lesson instructors that are those who take band and orchestra get in terms of those lessons over at Sherwood Middle School, and the commitment, of course, our families and parents make to support that, both financially as well as making sure that you practice. So again, fabulous performance. Best of luck. It's very special to be able to perform at Mechanics Hall. That will be a lifetime memory for you. And at this point, we would love to have you all come up and shake or fist bump or whatever the school committee members' hands. We have a certificate for each student who presented this evening. And how about one more round of applause for Come on right up around the front here, and we can
circle through. Perfect.
Nice job. Congratulations.
Great job. Yeah. Great job.
Thank
all
you.
right. And
Nicely done.
Cecilia.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Great job.
Performing for
Great
us
job.
this evening. Thank you.
Great job.
All right.
That's great performance.
Who's on you?
Thank you.
I'll give you this here. Congratulations, and Angelina.
Enjoy Mechanics Hall.
Good job.
Really nice having you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Good luck with the performance. Graham, great work. Good luck with the performance. All right. Congratulations. Nice work. Casey, congratulations. Nice work.
Excellent. Thank you so much again for being with us this evening. Thank you to the parents and all the support you have here in the room. Okay. We are at this point, when we move around some chairs, going to move on to a next time scheduled appointment. That is our public hearing on our 2023, 2020 to 2027 draft strategic plan. Some background, the Shrewsbury Public Schools partnered with the consulting firm Focus Schools to facilitate the process of creating an updated strategic plan for the district for the next 5 years. At our meeting on March 29th, the Focus Schools Managing Director, Carrie Purcell, and the school and district improvement manager, Ashley Santiago, provided an update of the work done in the district and shared a draft for the proposed strategic plan. That draft has been posted for viewing, and tonight the school committee will hold a public hearing in order to listen to any feedback on the draft on the proposed 23 to 2027 strategic plan. I would just note before I open up to anybody who would like to provide any feedback to us, certainly that plan, as I said, is posted online. There is a sign-up sheet here, mostly so we can get your name right for our records. But this is an opportunity for you to tell us what things we may have missed, things we might have overlooked, and then we will not be voting on this plan until our next meeting. And so while people may have questions to pose to the committee or to the administration, it's really our chance to listen and to hear from all of you. So I'm not prepared tonight to answer to every single point in there, but really would like to open it up and welcome folks to, if anybody would like to share. At this point, I'll open our public hearing and encourage people to come up to the microphone and let us know any thoughts that they might have about our plan. Please, welcome.
Thank you, Rajesh Velupudi, Precinct 10. Thanks for the sharing the strategic plan. So one question I have coming out of pandemic and also with the Assabet issue. So how nimble are we with the strategic plan to include those issues as we face, and does the strategic plan include the mitigation efforts related to vocational training into the plan, so that we have a continuity of vocational training opportunities for our students? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Would anyone else like to comment on the draft strategic plan? I'll make sure people have the opportunity. At this point, I know I will at this point see no other hands raised. Close that public hearing. I just do want to note, I think the issue of vocational training, we'll be talking about it a bit during a later portion of our agenda tonight on the budget matters. I think the nimbleness of this plan has been an important matter for all of us as we think about ongoing metrics and how are we going to develop a way to make sure as a committee and as a district we continue to go back to our goals and relook at those. So I hope we'll be able to cover some of the matters that you've raised at a later item on this agenda. The next item on our agenda is oops, I skipped an item, excuse me. Our homework policy revision, first draft of our reading. This is a first reading, and please come on up. First reading of an updated homework policy, that's School Committee Policy 523, which folks can find on our website for review by the committee. Beginning prior to the pandemic and continuing through this year, Ms. Clowder coordinated a thorough process to examine research regarding best homework practices and to renew our current policy, make suggestions for improvement, and to gather feedback. A draft was enclosed for all of us and includes some major revisions to our current policy. I want to also note that Ms. Boucher and Mr. Palich are members of our policy subcommittee, and they have had an opportunity to review this and give some feedback as well. Happy to have you here with us, Ms. Clowder. I know you have Mr. Bazidlo here as well to present information regarding the draft policy and to be able to answer some questions. And for those who are paying attention, we will be posting the draft for public viewing and also for any public comment in advance of a planned vote at our subsequent meeting on April 26th. And so with that, I will turn it over to you. Thanks for being here with us.
It's a pleasure to see you all again, and exciting to have a proposed draft of the revised policy ready to share. As you know, our policy dates back to, our original policy dated back to 2002. Our formal review, for those of you that maybe need a prompt to remember 2002, I'm feeling a little bit like Adam Vinatieri presenting this, because we finally crossed the finish line. We started our formal review of the existing policy in 2019 by convening the joint school councils at the time and really eliciting feedback from community stakeholders, staff, and students around their experience of homework. We hosted Dr. Kathy Vatterott, who is called the Homework Lady, a research expert, and identified some critical components of the existing policy together with members of the Homework Committee, because they recognized that there were significant strengths within the existing policy that they wanted to continue. And then as we revised the policy, we thought of it as an opportunity to really revisit the research, solicit feedback on how the policy compared to our practices with homework, and to address new needs. And then the pandemic hit. Our return to a disrupted year in 2021 gave us a chance to test some of the new approaches to homework that we had used actually during the pandemic, particularly kind of the use of digital tools. And I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that Todd and I are sitting here. Sorry, I should call you Mr. Bazidlo. But we represent a lot of different groups and conversations over time in our effort to make sure that we're considering feedback from students, staff, family members, and community members about homework. Our guidelines that we used as we were looking to revise the policy at each level also really informed kind of some of the things that went into the policy. So the chance, even though it was disrupted, to kind of live it for a year really helped us think about how to make systems of homework work at each level. And we're really grateful for the input from staff as we tried some things. The No Homework Weekends was a good example of that. and then kind of refined our approach and embedded them more formally in the policy.
Right, so the work over the last few years around the updating of this policy, we looked at some of the guiding principles, and quite frankly, the focus of homework is really learning. And we're talking about learning of content, which is really important for students' intellectual development, but really important, those soft skills that probably our employers and business partners talk about. And some of those things are like the habits of mind and self-management skills. How do you set up a schedule? How do you allot your time, organize your time? Additionally, really important key tool is how do you communicate with others when you're either having difficulty or you might need an extension or whatever it may be. And that goes for parents as well, right? So how do we create these opportunities for students and parents to communicate with educators and share what's happening in their own life and, and make adjustments when necessary? So as we look at this shared responsibility piece, it's at the high school looks a little bit differently, and at the middle school looks differently, and certainly at the elementary school it's certainly going to look differently. But I think what we want to communicate to families and students and our educators is that we all share a piece of the pie in terms of our responsibility to help ensure that our guiding principles are met, but also communication is really strong to ensure that people, students in general, are having good experiences and not overwhelmed and are learning. So we also, the graphic up there really shows kind of what we've talked about probably the last 2 or 3 years, right? And probably has been growing for the last 5 to 10 years with the introduction of technology and social media platforms, and then wanting to do all these activities, enriching activities outside of the school day beyond academics. So really focusing our principles is trying to find the balance within the workload and family activities and other activities within students' lives and educators' lives and family lives. And especially important to note is that there is a policy 291 that was in the school committee, our documents, that we shouldn't have to have students choose between cultural and religious experiences and homework. So it's our expectation that educators will be flexible around this, and certainly we need families and we need students to advocate and tell us when those things happen. We're not experts on everything that's happening within these communities, so we certainly, strong communication creates easier means for students and families, and overall creates better experiences for our students. So those were the guiding principles that we worked upon over the last, seemingly, is it 3 years now? 4 years?
We're finally happy with it. That's what's important.
Yeah, so we've also updated definition. I don't necessarily have to read this to you, but when we think of homework, we talk about there's a variety of different things that we might call homework. It might be reading, it might be studying, it might be some sort of digital assignment, it might be a project that's a long-term issue, it might be creating a podcast, creating a diorama. So there's so many different ways or different types of homework. I think that when I think of homework, I also equate it to what we saw this evening with our musicians. They didn't come up here and not practice. So in order to fortify learning, in order to improve student learning, it takes practice. How do we get the practice? Through homework sometimes. I mean, homework is an important scaffold for students' learning. And really focus on some of the things that we're seeing through the pandemic, especially like literacy and reading. So we need to have people reading at night and shoring up their skills. It's important to note, too, that homework is never going to be used as a behavior management strategy where there's some sort of consequence for a result of behavior in school, so we're going to get more homework. That's an important designation. And really, another piece that we talked about a lot is the balance piece and students' ability to create turn in high-quality homework based upon the workload. We had reports of people being overwhelmed at levels, families being overwhelmed, and that's why the importance of communication and trying to find that balance. We'll talk about that a little bit more ahead.
So as we looked at the existing policy, we also looked at the research base. And it's important to note that homework is most effective for middle and high school students. Essentially what that boils down to is that research doesn't show that time spent on homework has the same correlation for younger students, but it's also really important to think about how we define homework. And when we think about homework as independent reading, and when we think about homework as building academic skills in terms of managing your time and responsibilities, we do see that it's important that all students from grades 1 to 12 have that experience of building those muscles. So kindergarten is not included by design, But we do have time limits for other grades for the purpose of kind of building that the stamina over time. And in the research, the kind of the 10-minute rule guidance that we had in place that guided the original time allotments is still affirmed. So in looking at kind of how we would structure the guidance, we want to make sure that every student is assigned homework, because that's important, and also provide some flexibility, understanding that each student is different. And so the task that might take me a half an hour might take Mr. Bizidlo 15 minutes. And so as we're thinking about the balance and certainly reflecting on the amount of practice students who are interested in musicians or students who are in sports are also devoting to other kinds of practice, that we need to find a good compromise for that. So I want to emphasize kind of the multitude of purposes that homework serves, both in kind of developing self-management skills and also responsibility, and also just pure academic practice of skills. Those are some things that factored into the components of our policy.
And Mrs. Clutter just talked about the current practices affirmed through the research. We're still using the in grades 1 through 5 still holds. There's really no change for times. And if you look at the right portion of this slide, will give you kind of the recommended amount of homework Monday through Thursday for the levels, and as you get older grades, it goes through Friday, and of course there's things on the weekend. And I think you hit a very valuable point of what might take someone 30 minutes might take someone else 10 minutes, and that's important to even communicate that with educators to help calibrate their own, to help them understand where you might be struggling, where we might have to do some reteaching, or reduce homework, or try a different mode of homework, a different type of experience. So I think the other key piece, and we talked a lot about this, is advanced placement at the high school. It certainly requires more time than these guidelines. The curriculum for AP is run through the College Board. It's a really rigorous, fast-paced curriculum that we have to get through. So we start 2 weeks to 3 weeks later than most of the country school-wise, like Florida, Texas, California. They're starting in beginning of August. We're starting towards the end of August, beginning of September. So our students that are enrolled in those classes are typically a couple weeks, I don't want to say behind, but we definitely get a later start. So there's a little bit of pressure in terms of trying to make sure that homework is going to continue at the pace in order to make sure that our students are prepared for that end of year assessment, which happens the first 2 weeks of May.
Mm-hmm. So changes within the policy, the big one is that we included students at the high school. So we want to acknowledge the need that within the high school, there's also different levels of work assigned based on the course load students are carrying, as Mr. Bizidlo just spoke to. And also the proliferation of co-curricular activities at the upper middle level and high school makes the issue of balance important. The other piece that we really considered is thinking about, in addition to cultural and religious observances and just plain family time, the role that technology can play in supporting students' academics, especially since we have adaptive software tools that enable students to practice things that are at their next need. But also the distraction factor, understanding that a time allotment for homework is going to be different if you are looking at your phone or some other device as you're trying to complete your work. And we do see that some students who are struggling to balance the workload are also struggling to manage kind of the distraction piece. And so looking to think about how we have clear expectations that all students engage in homework, and also kind of flexibility, recognizing that adolescents are growing, and they may not be as skillful as self-advocacy as an adult would be. And making sure that there's a kind of two-way communication around expectations is important. We also made sure to include kind of real specificity and shared communication around a no homework calendar. That's there because we want to make sure that families can anticipate across levels. If you have a student at the middle level in the high school, you want a true no homework weekend would mean that both students don't have homework. And so the addition of those dates will be revisited every year, because we recognize that the celebration of Lunar New Year celebrations, for example, is going to change depending on when the holiday hits. And we want to make sure we have flexibility as well as accommodation built into our approach.
So really, wrapping up your key messages is, again, regular practice leads to academic success, so all students are expected to complete homework. not procrastinate, if you're watching students in high school. Again, students and educators and families all have different needs, so again, partnership, two-way communication, and educators will offer flexibility while holding students accountable for completing their work. And as we put this up here, it's like the Goldilocks principle. There's not enough, which doesn't help, and too much isn't helpful, so trying to, again, recalibrate through communication what's an appropriate amount, that just right, where students can continue to see development and learn and improve their skills and become really adept at learning and also managing their time with some of the soft skills that are required. So we've learned this year from feedback from our staff and from students who have shared and from families is like those adjustments have to happen and will continue to happen.
And I would just add one of the things that was an unintended consequence of some of our guidelines that we put into place in the interim while we're refining the policy is, for example, we wanted to communicate the importance of flexibility. And the perception from educators was that they also wanted some support in saying, okay, I've extended the due date, we have a second due date, but I can hold them accountable for the second due date, right? Yes, that's part of growing too, right? Failing to hand in a deadline and facing the consequences and learning the next time is part of kind of growing those skills that we talked about.
Deadlines are important.
Yes.
Deadlines are important.
Tax season just finished, right? So
Right.
we want to make sure that our students are learning those life skills as well, and that communication is such that they're not learning it at the last minute with no opportunity to grow. So we know that no homework is not effective. We know that too much homework is not effective, and we're trying to find that sweet spot. So in terms of implementation, this is probably wins the prize for the biggest policy in the district handbook. It's 10 pages long. And so our goal to kind of think about implementation is to simplify it for each level and make sure that there's some guidelines that, you know, if you're an elementary parent, you're looking at the elementary timelines and you don't necessarily need to read the piece about the homework. So that in addition to seeing the policy in its entirety, there's some kind of practical pieces that are included and reiterated at things like back to school nights, together with our annual communication around the no homework calendar so that families know and can plan around those dates. I think the other piece that we have talked about is making sure that really the goal is learning and quality work. So wanting to make sure that as we're thinking about accountability for students, we're also thinking about how we give them feedback so that they become more independent and self-directed in their work. And that was another piece in terms of, I really appreciate the feedback from our educators through surveys around, you know, their interpretation of feedback, like I have to grade every single assignment, and thought, well, depending on some of the assignments that Mr. Bizidlo had featured before, like if it's a practice assignment, you may not need to give feedback on every assignment. But we do expect that you give feedback to families on how well kids are doing with homework in general, but also to students on the specific quality of their work. If the goal is learning and high quality work, then students have invested time in creating that work. We want to make sure educators are investing time in giving students feedback. But we recognize that it's not tenable to give students in-depth feedback on everything that they do for homework. And it's not necessary to further learning. So we want to try to find a balanced piece, but also reiterate to everybody that the purpose of homework is learning, and learning in all sorts of endeavors, learning the content, learning self-management, learning rules and responsibilities, and self-advocacy. And we know that that's part of the social-emotional learning competencies that we've talked about in previous presentations. So I'm going to open it up to feedback.
Wonderful. And I wonder if either members of our policy subcommittee have anything they'd like to add. Start with, please.
Sure.
Thank
So
you.
I just want to thank all the educators, members of the leadership team, the parents that have, and all the efforts in updating this policy. This has been, to say a group effort is an understatement. And I also appreciate the efforts to incorporate the high school into this policy, as it now will stretch 1 through K. I like the approach regarding educators providing the advance notice to the extent possible to families about the homework. I think that's very important to make sure that as much as possible, people are getting as much lead time as possible for kids to complete assignments, because I think that goes to that balance piece when kids are very busy with other activities. If they know a week in advance or whatever, that they have some time to complete assignments, and it assists families in planning accordingly. I also appreciate the update with regard to the educators collaborating with families and students to avoid situations where students have multiple things due the same time period. I think that's really important, especially at the high school level where, kids may get slammed with a bunch of tests, like right in, the same time frame and, or dates in close proximity. I also thought it's very thoughtful to link this policy now to the policy concerning religious observances, and that's directly linked in this policy, and I appreciated that. And I also think that the no homework weekends and dates, that we're going to have the flexibility to determine that on an annual basis and take a look at that to kind of see globally how it impacts the schedule. It's different times of the year. Certain years we want to highlight other, different weekends. So I think that's very helpful. And I also really like how we've laid out the different roles of the different stakeholders. It's very clear what we believe the roles and responsibilities of students, parents, educators, and leadership are with regard to homework. And it's all very clearly laid out in the policy. And again, to go to your point about students advocating for extensions and to encourage that and to strike that balance between advocating for extensions but also holding them accountable. And I think that's a nice balance has been struck in the policy. So those were the comments.
Thank you very much.
And I just briefly want to thank everyone for taking the time to update and work on this policy. I think that this policy represents an area, as we've discussed, where Shrewsbury led a few decades ago, and it's nice to see us continuing to lead. I do like the emphasis on communication as part of this policy, because obviously, as we discussed as a subcommittee a few times, and you had noted in your report tonight, there are a substantial portion of this policy is in place. It's a matter of making sure that it's put into practice, and obviously communication is key to that. And I want to lift up something that Ms. Boucher noticed about also making sure we're driving home the point about religious observances, given recent community conversations that have been very important about making sure that we as a district are doing everything we can to respect different faith traditions. So thank you for your work, and I'm pleased with the draft that we have before us.
Thank you. Questions or comments, please, Ms. Fritz?
Thank you. I'm glad that we were finally able to get to this after we were working through COVID and all the issues that kind of went before, because we had started this with well intentions and it just had to fall by the wayside. And I think about it as a parent whose children were before 2002, and we still laugh about this family story where it was one of my children's week to have the journal and the bunny, and it happened to be school vacation week. So we had to take it with us, and it was ugly if we were going to lose the bunny or lose the journal. And I think about how we've really kind of moved from what we used to do through 2002 to this, which is a much more flexible and work-life balance for families and for students and for staff. And I do feel life is a little more difficult now for a lot of families, doing more with less in their own work environment. So to have that time to understand what the homework policy is and how that will roll out over a year is very helpful. And as Jason mentioned, looking at cultural and religious observances is something that we're much more attuned to than we were many, many years ago. So I'm very pleased with this. I hope the community is, and I like the shared responsibility piece of it, because it's everybody's has to be in students, parents, and the school district. And the other piece will be for us to make sure that we're communicating this in a way that's early and often throughout the year, so everybody understands this is what happens, and these are the things that you need to do, and these are times when you have no homework on a weekend, which is wonderful. So thank you for all your work.
Yeah, just to add to my colleagues, I agree with everything that's been said. I appreciate the level of detail, also the breakout by grade level, especially around the time guidelines. I think that's really important, and I agree with the topic of discussion around religious observances, making that, documenting that in this policy and tying it to the religious observance documentation as well. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I certainly wanted, when I harken back about why bother to do this, sometimes why draft policies? Like, they live on our website. Does anyone pay attention to them? Make me wonder about that a little bit. But this one feels so important. When we think about last year, in particular, coming back from COVID, lots of mental health stresses and challenges. And we are also, this year trying to make sure we're engaging more kids in some of the activities like we saw this evening, and getting rid of fees so we can get kids engaged in other things that may be outside of the traditional school day. Then we have start time changes where people said the pressures of homework and activities, that's part of the problem. Like, we have to account for kind of all of it. So it feels very holistic, and I really appreciate that. I think the couple things that happened during COVID is we saw as a parent, and then also in this role here, the need for more consistency across buildings and the consistency across rooms or classrooms. Certainly, I know we were for good reasons, a little lighter on homework during COVID, and I certainly worry when I look at my children about their ability to persevere and hit something that's hard and not say, I'll just ask tomorrow, I'm closing the book and I'm done, right? Or they don't have books, but I'm walking away, and how to kind of keep them going. So I do think homework is important. I think there's something really valuable here, and I don't want it to be seen as this policy is like, we're being all light and fluffy and soft. Like, you have work to do, and you have to demonstrate that. I really appreciate, Mr. Bizzillo, your point, because how do we make this time productive is important, but the notion here too, and I would just sort of call it out as something that I've certainly seen, I've heard other parents talk about, that studying is also homework. And I don't know that my kids, so I'll go here, know what studying is. They say, well, I looked at the study sheet, and so I'm done. And we're like, well, you did that in the classroom, so what is that? What did you do there, right? And so that we think of studying as an activity that, like, well, I did the question, so I don't know what else to do. Some of that is borne by natural consequences of that wasn't studying because you didn't get the result you were looking for. But, as we moved in different directions and think about homework a little more holistically, I think there's some muscles that we need to build up in our students over the last couple of years that I certainly see as a parent, and hope that as we kind of think about recommunicating on these issues that we're talking about the needs a little more holistically. And I think you've struck a really nice balance, as been mentioned by my colleagues, between no homework and religious accommodations and trying to kind of be a little more nimble. But we also know that, I see, certainly, again, I'll use my own family, the ability to advocate. Like, I'll just tell them later, right? Like, send the email now. You have an iPad. We got it for you. Like, what does that mean, right? And so how do we help kids do exactly what you're asking for, right? That they have some ownership and responsibility here, and certainly have perceived in many ways that sometimes that has fallen to our parents, and that's particularly at your level, not their job and not appropriate to help our kids develop those skills. So obviously in extreme situations, parents are here to be a support for kids, but how do we help them on the average day say, that was hard, I need to tell my teacher that was hard and I need help. And so there's a real balance here, and I hope we're getting it right and trying to strike it. I'm really curious to hear, and I'm glad we're posting it to kind of hear what people think and where they're at. And we've heard a lot about, I know we've done some thought exchanges and other ways to hear from people, and while that's great, that's important. Let me ask one question if I can, as was a lot of just my musings on this topic. How are we going to communicate about all of it? What are our thoughts? What are the different ways? Because to the point, there's all different sort of stakeholder groups that have responsibility. And so what are some of the early thinking about how we share?
So we have been communicating with staff pretty regularly as we've kind of elicited their feedback and then put things in the draft. I hope that different stakeholder groups will see themselves in this document. From students, for example, one of the big conversations we had initially with the leadership team at the high school is, I don't understand why students feel like they couldn't get an exemption. Any student that asked me, I've been very flexible. And then we kind of looked at the syllabi, and in the syllabi it says, we're not granting exceptions. People recognized, wait a minute, our practice doesn't match our own language. We need to kind of take that out. That was kind of the first kind of thinking about, oh, this is why students think that. And so that move kind of paved the way for then what's a reasonable extension, and then how do we coach kids to be able to manage, not just meet this new extended deadline, but manage their time better so that they do better the next time, right? And reiterating, yes, you can hold kids accountable for missing due dates. You can't wait until the very last minute to hold them accountable. Like that's part of the piece. I hope staff will see themselves in some of those refinements. And families, we heard, as we discussed this policy, if it's independent reading, there also needs to be some accountability for independent reading, because some kids, like studying, would equate that to, I don't have homework. And so we rolled out grade 9 planners this year to really break down, how do you plan for a long-term project? How can you use Schoology not just to look at your feed that tells you what's due the next day, but everyone's put some effort into thinking about, how do they manage long-term projects and communicate with students about that. Communicating about the policy itself, I think we need to, once it's approved, kind of celebrate that Adam Vinatieri moment, like we got this policy, and then create those additional documents so that we can, most importantly, set people up for success next year when we typically communicate. And then also kind of really think through how to message the piece about the calendar so that that's really clear. That was another piece of feedback. But in terms of students, I hadn't really thought about that. I think my sense from grades K to 8 is it feels a little bit like business as usual. And I'm curious as to how.
Yeah, so I think being clear and providing as much clarity and consistent communication with high school students as possible through their Schoology feed, through emails, through class meetings, through when we review syllabus at the beginning of every school year, including the highlights of what their responsibilities are within that, so they're aware of those things. I think there'll be a number of students that will read that and get that, and a number of students that we have to be reminded of that. I think a key piece around the communication piece, it's really my experience has been with students generally at the high school, it's difficult for students to have conversations with adults. Some students are really confident and can do it like lickety-split, and others are, it really is a struggle, and it requires some coaching on the behalf of school counselors. It requires coaching on the behalf of assistant principals, or even at home, of like, what would you say to your teacher when you're going to go ask for an extension, or saying they send the email and then you have to follow up by doing this. When would you do it? I don't know. I'd probably do it. Maybe it might be good to do it at the end of class when everyone kind of leaves, so you have a private moment. Or can we talk after school? So there's a number of ways that we have to partner together with families to coach people up on it. It's simply not, okay, just communicate, it's going to work, it's going to happen, it's in the policy. That just is not how teenagers work, as you all know. So again, clear, consistent communication with students around that, and trying to have them set the expectations, have them meet expectations. We've had great success, in my opinion, around when we set expectations, our students meet them. So here's the expectation, here's what we have to do, and it's my expectation you're going to meet it, and if you don't meet it, here's what we're going to do to fix it, and how can we fix it moving forward. And again, like I said, adults are intimidating. I think we have a fantastic staff, K to 12, but at the high school as well.
Biased.
Yeah, a little biased, sure. Confirmation bias. But I think if we have, our educators are more willing and able to be flexible. I think the key is, like, they have to know. When people are not well and don't say anything, that's a problem. And whether it's, I'm struggling with homework or whatever reason, I always tell parents, we can't help you if we don't know.
Right.
And sometimes students aren't going to talk to their teacher, so if that's happening, parents have to reach out and talk to us, so we can help intervene. And it's hard, as you know, for teenagers. Sometimes we have some that don't want to talk to us at home. So looking at Power School and trying to keep looking at those grades and everything is really important too. So, yeah.
I think we use the structures we have for communication, and then I think we've been successful in the past with things like School Talk, kind of hosting specific things and different forums for parents. One of the things I noticed in the old policy was that there would be kind of workshops for parents around homework, and I thought, did those exist? I don't remember any of the workshops for parents. So thinking about how we can engage parents the way we've engaged the Joint Council or the PTO might be a helpful way of not just sending out the policy, but also eliciting, like, so how is it going? This is our intention. Is that your reality?
Right.
And checking in both with parents and families about that.
Yeah, and I wonder, Mr. Bizzillo, that's something for you to consider maybe early on in the school year, using some of the advisory time to have some of the older students, particularly for our younger students, talk about, no, when I went and talked to the teacher, they actually did help. Like, you can do that, and they are, maybe modeling it from them, because to your point, sometimes the parents' nudging or encouragement at home is not as well appreciated always, and we don't understand, and we have no idea what it's like to talk to another human about things. So I could see maybe that being helpful as well. So, but your points are really well taken. I know we'll be coming back to this for a vote for our next meeting, but Dr. Sawyer, anything you'd like to add on this important topic?
Yeah, I first want to thank Ms. Clowder for orchestrating this over the past few years and making sure that the process was thorough and included a lot of voices. I want to thank Mr. Bizzillo for his work with the high school staff, as well as high school members of the high school leadership team, because that's where obviously the biggest difference is here in this policy, and it's affecting them directly for the first time through a school committee level piece. I think that certainly all the school council members, parents, students, everyone have provided feedback. But when we do share the link to the actual policy, which is very detailed, I think it is important to note, and especially for our faculty and staff, where there was feedback given where they we're looking for very specific clarity. I think the reason this is a longer policy than typical is that there is a lot of detail and clarity there to help make sure that people are all working from the same playbook around what's happening. So I think it's been very thorough. I think that it's our responsibility as a school district to have a framework that is equitable and so that people know what to expect. And we can't have a situation where it depends which elementary school your child goes to, or it depends what team your middle schooler happens to be on, or it depends on which high school teacher for U.S. History 1 or whatever the class might be, where there's multiple sections. There should not be widely variant practices around homework. This has to do with what the research says is best practice. Much like the graphic around the Goldilocks piece, we know that we need to have enough of a dose for it to be effective, but we don't want to have too much of it because that creates other issues and is not effective either. So how do we try to stay that? It doesn't mean it's going to be exactly the same. There's going to be some professional judgment that teachers use, but we need to make sure that there's collaboration across teachers teaching the same course, teachers on the same team. We don't want to put students in untenable situations where they have, as Ms. Boucher mentioned, if all of a sudden on the last day before a grading period, a student has 4 tests and 2 projects due, I don't think any of us as an adult would think if that was assigned to us in our work environment that would be fair, nor would we be able to do quality work if we had that much demand placed on it at once. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we're not having situations where students, through procrastination, are ending up in situations where a lot of things, because of multiple extensions, are due in different places or due at the same time, and they've more or less done it to themselves, right? So we need to make sure that we're balancing this on both sides, and there's accountability for everyone in a partnership that's involved here. So I think it provides a very clear framework. I think it will be our responsibility to boil it down to some documents that are student-friendly, friendly for staff in a professional way, friendly for families to understand what the rules of the road are. And I think we're very committed to implementing this with fidelity, and I think that over the next year plus, obviously, a year from now, we'll have a sense of some of the practices that we have in place already. The good news is when this goes into effect, if it's voted 2 weeks from tonight, it's not going to all of a sudden be some massive shift in our practice. A lot of the things, this is putting into writing a lot of the good practices that have been going on. So I think I would probably consider the rest of this school year as kind of a soft opening, so to speak, and then really making sure that the communication as we start the next school year is very, very clear, and then throughout the year is provided, whether that's through principals' newsletters or reminders or certain resources. And I'm sure there are great ideas people have that can make that efficient and effective communication around it. But it was a very, very big project, and I think that it's going to put us in a stronger place. And I think it reflects, homework is one of those topics where you're going to have disagreement. Some people are going to say there shouldn't be any or very little. Some should say there should be more. And there's going to be a range of opinions among families, faculty, and staff. I think this is a very reasonable policy, and that gives us a framework to work within that I think should be effective, and it's based on the research. So thank you, and I look forward to the school committee hopefully approving it in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for being here this evening. The next item on our agenda, also under the matters of policy, is our charter school and school choice. This is a report. We also will be holding a public hearing and a vote. I know Mr. Collins had provided enrollment and financial information relative to charter schools, school choice, virtual schools, and students who are homeschooled in the district, and that report wasn't closed for us. The school committee is required to hold an annual school choice hearing and vote upon whether or not they wish to accept any school choice students from other communities for the upcoming school year. Tonight's public hearing will satisfy that requirement of Mass General Law, Chapter 76, Section 12B, which requires a public hearing prior to a school committee vote not to participate in or otherwise restrict the provisions of an interdistrict school choice program. So we will be taking a vote after a public hearing tonight, and I know ultimately, given many of our space constraints and as well as a lot of competing priorities and interests that we have here, that the recommendation from the administration is that we not open any new school seats for school choice students due to many of our space constraints, particularly at the upper grade levels. But Mr. Collins, I will turn it over to you to get us started here this evening.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Thank you for that overview. We have taken this opportunity, as we have in years past, to not only talk about school choice, but Also, talk about other school options for parents, including charter schools and homeschool students, which are topics of interest to both the school committee and the general public. And as you mentioned, this evening is the school choice hearing for the upcoming school year, the 2023-2024 school year, and a vote. I would note at the outset, I'm not sure if I mentioned it here or not, but the Mass Department of Education and the state law regarding school choice is one in which all schools are a default automatic school choice receiving district unless annually they vote to not be a school choice district. So that's why this is an annual event and why this is so important to have a vote each and every year on this topic. So I'm going to start with charter schools first, and there's a lot of data here that I'm not going to spend an enormous amount of time, but really kind of hit the highlights. And this is a graph going back to the 98-99 school year with respect to charter school enrollments. And you can see back at that time in the late 90s, there were very few, and there were very few charter schools. And then during the 06-07 year, the population continued to escalate with more of our students primarily attending Advanced Math and Science Academy in Marlborough, and it peaked out in 2010, 2011 at 144 students, and then subsequently came down. And this year we have 20 students attending charter schools. Where are they going? So this is as of December 22. We have 16 students at AMSA, 3 students at the Abby Kelly Foster Charter School in Worcester, and 1 at the Learning First Charter School in Worcester as well. What grade levels are they at? You can see the distribution there. And I also put, using our own grade configuration of K4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, you can see that we have very few students in charter schools, only 1 in the K4 grade levels, and 12 students in grades 5 through 8, and then 7 in the high school grades. So about a third of them are in our high school grades. In terms of the finances, there's a it's a complicated kind of funding formula and some reimbursement scheme that the state devised with respect to charter schools. The short story is that for this fiscal year, this is data right off the Department of Education website, and it basically just shows our 20 students, our 20 FTE, accounting for tuition dollars of $296,952. So basically, that $297,000 is a quote-unquote assessment or charge to the town. And our town finances go to each of those respective charter schools to pay the tuitions for those students attending AMSA and Abby Kelly and Learning First. So there is a cost to our local community. There is some state reimbursement that the state has provided with respect to so-called facilities aid, and they've fully funded that aspect this year. And the average cost per pupil for this fiscal year is just under $16,000. So it does have a financial impact. It's kind of this basic concept of the money follows the students. And so that is why, certainly maintaining high-quality schools in district is financially beneficial. And so just a little bit more on that topic. Basically, the cost is an average that's calculated, and again, the monies are diverted. This chart here in the bottom is shown to display back to fiscal 15. Again, this is from the Department of Education website. And on the bottom line there with the red arrow, it shows a net cost to the district. So you can see back in fiscal 2015, it was costing the town of Shrewsbury over $1 million in funding that got diverted to other charter schools for our students attending those charter schools. And at that time, there was just over 98 students. And then if you flash forward to fiscal 22, the last fiscal year where this data for this chart was available, there were 27 students, and the net cost to the town was $378,000. So one of the concept pieces that Dr. Sawyer has talked a lot about is that, while we're paying an average cost when the money follows the student, that when a student, if they were to all come back, if you will, it wouldn't inflate our budget by that amount because the marginal cost, to add a student to fourth grade, if you will, to quote-unquote Mrs. Jones's class is zero because we already have the bus route in place, we already have the teacher in place, the lights are already paid for, and so that's why this concept of average cost versus marginal cost is a really important one when you're talking about charter school finances. So the projected enrollment for charter schools, this information just came out from the Department of Education for next year, is 16 students at AMSA, 4 at Abbey Kelly Foster Charter School, and 1 at the new Worcester Cultural Academy Charter School in Worcester. And so that's a projected enrollment based upon applications that they received, and it's still unclear with the new charter school, Worcester Cultural Academy, if that student will actually be accepted. They're supposed to be accepting first and foremost students from the city of Worcester, so it's really kind of unclear if that's going to materialize right now or not.
Mr. Collins, can I just interject? And I just want to confirm, my understanding of when the charter school, a new charter school law was passed a number of years ago, part of it was to give communities some more budget certainty, is that the town of Shrewsbury would not be charged for any more than that projected number of students in the next fiscal year. So even if ultimately some of these charter schools enrolled more students, the amount of money that's diverted is based on this initial projection so that the town can make those fiscal plans, which was an improvement to what the law was previously, where you wouldn't really know what the bill was going to be until the year actually materialized. So that was a beneficial change, I think, in the state policy level.
Absolutely. Shifting gears to school choice. The last time that the school committee voted to accept school choice was back in the 2016-2017 school year. At that time, the school committee voted to open up a total of up to 30 seats in various grade levels. And the reason that the school committee at that time decided to do that was financial distress. And again, under the concept of the money follows the students, that when we receive school choice students from other communities, we receive $5,000 per student. And at that particular point, that was important revenue for the town. And again, the school committee was very judicious about what grade levels and what schools those students were to attend. And that was basically based upon space available at the time. And so that we knew, again, under this concept of marginal cost versus average cost, that we'd be taking in $5,000 per student, but we would not be adding any additional cost because we had room and good class sizes to accommodate that. So that was the reason, but since that time, the school committee has not allowed any new school choice students to enter. Another important piece and aspect of school choice is that once a student is accepted, they have the right to remain in the school district until graduation. And so even if we were to experience, high class sizes in one particular grade in a future year, that doesn't mean we have the authority to expel or unenroll a school choice student. They have the right to stay through graduation once they're accepted. So here's a chart that shows both the sending students in the blue bar, and then the receiving students in the red bar going back to 2013. And so back in the 2013 on the far left, at that time, there were 32 students, residents, who chose to school choice out to other surrounding communities for a variety of different reasons. And then at that time, there were still 13 students from a prior acceptance of school choice students prior to that year. So that's how you read this chart on any given year. The blue is sending out and the red is receiving. The other point that I would make here is that the school committee, the school administration, the town has no authority to prevent or block parents from making school choice decisions to attend other communities that are accepting school choice students. So it's not an approval process that Dr. Sori says, yes, I'll approve this kid to go school choice or not. Parents have the right to do that if they're accepted in a community school that's accepting school choice students. And, you know, so why would parents do that? You know, some of those, and you'll see some of this data, actually we used to get a fair number of, or a handful of students who were, and parents who were selecting to send their students to a school choice community, including Worcester, for full-day kindergarten because we did not have enough seats. So that was one reason. Sometimes also parents who are teachers in other school districts, and if they're accepting school choice students, that's another reason. It's a family reason. It's really not related to, you know, the quality of Shrewsbury schools. It's really for child care and child supervision issues. So there's just a variety of reasons. This chart is the distribution of sending students. You can see right now the K through 3 band, there's only 3 students who are opting other communities, and there are 15 in grades 5 through 8, and then 32, so the majority, almost 2/3 of them, students, parents who are selecting other school districts are at the high school grade levels. And again, since we've been offering tuition-free full-day kindergarten, there have been no kindergarten students in the school choice program. So where are they going? And this chart shows you the communities that they're going to. Each of those rows represents a student in the community, the school district they're attending, and then the grade level. And so the piece on the left is quote-unquote typical school districts, and then on the right are all the virtual schools, virtual school student enrollments. So you can see a large majority of students are attending now virtual schools. A little bit more information coming on that. Here's just a quick chart on the finances related to school choice for the past 10 years. The green is revenue incoming for school choice receiving, and then in the red is the school choice tuition outgoing that's being paid to all those other communities where students are attending. Again, it's $5,000 per student either way, and then if a student has special education services, then those are added to that $5,000. And we would either pay a little bit more if our student had special needs services, or if one of our students we were providing services, we would bill the state for those services, if you will, and get a little bit more revenue. Virtual school enrollment, currently we have 28 students. Again, more than half of the outgoing students are in virtual schools. At the Education Cooperative Connections Academy, TECA, and then now we have one at the Greater Commonwealth Virtual School. So it's 58%, and the tuition is different for virtual schools. It's not quite double, but nearly. It's $9,259 per student for virtual school attendance. This is the virtual school enrollment history, and as you might expect, since the pandemic onset, which started in the latter part of the 1920 school year, but kind of really took effect in the 2021 school year. Ever since that point, virtual school enrollment has increased each year. School choice receiving, so these are the 20 students now that we have. There's been attrition over time based upon the original acceptance. Some students that were school choicing in either decided to go back to their home school, or they moved away, or I know of a couple of students who have actually moved to Shrewsbury. So they're no longer school choice, they're actually residents. But we have 15 coming from Worcester, 1 Wachusett, 2 Boylston, 1 Millbury, and 1 Westboro for the 20. And this year the revenue will be $105,229. And again, that additional $5,229 is the special education increment, if you will, for additional services. Shifting gears to homeschool students, and you can see here the steep climb when the 2021 school year, again, that was kind of the first full year of the pandemic onset, hybrid education, where we had 50 families choosing to educate their kids at home. Subsequent year, it dropped off to 33, 38. So we landed at a spot that was higher pre-pandemic, but again, not quite as high as the peak. So just some summary notes. Again, the charter school decline in enrollment has a significant positive benefit to the town's finances. School choice sending enrollment has increased, again, primarily in that virtual school enrollment area. And again, the school committee must vote each year to accept or not accept, and the recommendation is to not accept based upon space limitations, especially at our upper grade levels. And we've been talking a lot about the space constraints at the high school, and so, you know, the recommendation is not to let students in now because, again, they have the right to remain all the way through grade 12. And so, you know, why are all these options available in Massachusetts? And again, it kind of goes back to the big, you know, 100,000-foot level global picture of this concept that, you know, creating a so-called competitive environment, you know, rises all boats and improves performance. And certainly we know that, you know, Shrewsbury Schools has a high-quality school district, and it's important to maintain that for the community because they desire that, and have a host of co-curricular programs, just like you saw the students here, and make sure that they're successful. And so, you know, investing in our own quality is a good financial decision, as well as an educational one. And so that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions that the committee might have before the hearing.
Before I turn us over to a opportunity to hear from any members of the public, do committee members have any questions for Mr. Collins?
I have a question around the Mass Academy at WPI. Are those numbers included in this, or do we not have anyone there, or do we have people and they're not included?
I don't know if we have any students.
We definitely have students there. It's a very unique school that's set
Right.
up through the legislature, and so there's no, the cost is borne entirely by the state budget. So there's no mechanism where money, that's a case where the money does not follow the student. The money's provided through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts directly. So it's pretty much the equivalent of if a student left to go to a private school. There's really no financial obligation. There's no ties to the
To our
Shrewsbury
budget.
public schools. It's a totally separate school that they attend, and there's no financial connection.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful program.
It is,
It's
right,
really a
very
phenomenal
competitive.
program.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, the 5,000 and then the 9,000 for the virtual schools, those are set by whom?
By the state,
By, through DESE, or is that through?
through DESE.
Okay, all right. This may be silly and maybe even a little outside your purview, but are we anticipating virtual schools to continue to grow? Are we hoping we see some turnaround? I mean, I appreciate why in the pandemic there were opportunities that people maybe thought made some more sense. Is that a trend where other communities are continuing to see more kids wanting to enroll in this, even though we've got some opportunities we hope to entice students to want to be in classrooms? You know,
Yeah, I suppose, you know, your guess is as good as anybody's. I don't know, if, you know, I guess one juxtaposition I would, you know, kind of look at is, you know, the homeschool chart where, you know, in the pandemic it peaked, and then after that it kind of came down. And we really haven't seen that with virtual schools. We saw
Right.
it increase and kind of keep increasing. So, you know, I certainly think that the onset of the pandemic and the implementation of online education has taken hold with lots of families and maybe some on a more permanent basis. I would say that, you know, my sense is, and maybe Dr. Sewer has more information on this or anecdotal information, that you know, some of the students that are attending the virtual schools, you know, have certain disabilities like school anxiety or school phobia, and you know, that is a format that works for them educationally. And not quite sure how to, how that will be resolved, but I guess it's kind of a little bit of a wait and see.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just add that what we've seen over time is that a fair amount of changes where a family might leave the district for a virtual school, but then they'll return. Some of these are more shorter term. They may be looking for what they think might be a solution to be a good fit for their child, and then they're not satisfied with it, or the student's not satisfied with it. I don't have this statistic anecdotally. I think there were some students who, had gone fully remote during the pandemic, and it was perceived by that family that was working for them, and so when there was no longer an opportunity for being fully remote with us, they shifted to, I know some of these families applied for, and were accepted at the virtual school, and they've remained. So I think looking at some of the numbers, that they're heavier on the high school end, my hypothesis would be that if a student who is not already out, for them to go out, it's less likely as opposed to a student who's already out staying out. But we'll have to see how these numbers shift over the next year or two, and whether or not this is something that's a new normal for us in terms of the number of students or not. But again, our job is to continue to create the best programming we can. And just as you had the report at your last meeting around, we have more supports now for mental and emotional health than we did, and so helping students who might have some of those issues around anxiety or phobias, that we're trying to provide and accommodate them to be within our schools as much as possible. But it is, just like a charter school, it is an option that families can exercise if they wish, and a small number relative to the size of our district are doing so.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any other comments. At this point in time, I will open this up for a public hearing satisfying the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 76, Section 12B. Should anybody like to address the committee regarding the matter of interdistrict school choice, you're welcome to come up to the microphone. I'd encourage you to kindly put your name down on the sheet. Having our second public hearing of the evening, I welcome anybody who would like to. Please feel free. We are open. You have your opportunity. Use it, please.
Again, Rajesh Velagapudi, Precinct 10. With the school choice, I think I really appreciate the recommendation not to vote, because given our own space constraints and the need for more opportunity for our own students in the town. But one quick thing I'm trying to understand is, so how do we compensate for the loss of that revenue? So is it already captured in the budget if we don't go with the external the revenue that we receive as part of the school choice, or is it already been adopted in the budget form? And that's, I just want to check that.
Sure, thank you.
I'm happy to answer the question.
Great. Thank you.
It's essentially all the funding for school choice and for charter schools is basically taken off the top by the state before out of our Chapter 70 allotment. So when the so-called cherry sheet comes out each year with the state funding for education, it includes not only the formula for Chapter 70, but how many charges against the district, and so that money is sort of diverted initially. So that's already factored into Mr. Mizakar's budget in terms of the amount of revenue the town has available, and that's factored into and of course, right now we have a very clear set of parameters around our own budget numbers, but so it really isn't something that, as opposed to when the students were receiving, that money comes from the state directly to the school district, and we can spend that as part of the school department budget, and that's what we do. We offset costs for it. So we're on the beneficial side of that marginal cost piece then, because it helps us. But it isn't as if the money comes directly out of the school budget, which is a little different, for example, from vocational technical education, where that's a line item in the school department budget to pay those tuitions. Is there anything I'm missing on that, Mr. Collins?
No, you explained it perfectly, and I would just say, to further that one step more, is that for fiscal '24, we anticipated the 20 students staying with the district, and $100,000 is implicitly, set aside to offset teacher salaries for fiscal '24. And then when all those students eventually graduate, our revenue will be zero, and the school district budget will have to absorb those costs over time. And the students are in various grade levels, and so it will be kind of a step down. It won't be all at once. So that's the plan going forward.
Just a follow-up on that. Is part of the projections that we're getting then for how many we'll have? Oh, no, that's charter schools. Sorry, I just conflated two things. Is it then a charge based on, since it's cherry sheet, sort of last year's numbers? Or is it?
They can't, it's a sort of a cap on the amount that can be charged for charters that's part of that cherry sheet
Okay.
from the state. So the amount of money diverted to charter schools can't exceed what the projection was the previous year.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks for the question. Any other comments or questions, comments for our public hearing this evening? Not seeing any, I will close the hearing. At this point in time, there is a recommendation that the school committee vote not to participate in interdistrict school choice for the 2023-2024 school year. Are there any other comments or questions on the matter? If seeing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor can do so with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That matter passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
For your time this evening. The next item, under Finance and Operations that we have this evening is our fiscal year 2024 final school department appropriated budget. We have both a recommendation from Dr. Sawyer with a presentation and a vote. I will just remind those tuning in that both Dr. Sawyer and Mr. Collins presented the superintendent's original recommendation for the fiscal year 2024 school department budget at our meeting on February 15th, and since that time, the district has made updated cost projections. The school committee has suggested areas for strategic investment, particularly coming out of our strategic planning work, and that I understand you have an updated recommendation for us this evening, Dr. Sawyer, for fiscal year 2024. We did also receive a memo and an updated line item, which will be in the school committee's book that I know will be posted again sometime tomorrow, we hope. Dr. Sawyer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and we'll certainly post those reports under the school committee on the website section
Thank
for
you.
reports for each meeting. So in terms of the bottom line budget for the school department, the recommendation remains the same as what I presented to you in February, which is for $83,086,622. That's a $3.76 million increase, representing 4.75%, and that is the upper limit of the so-called cap on, based on the agreement between the school committee and the select board, which continues to be something that has been incredibly beneficial to our school district, has provided us with stability and predictability, so we can focus on the business of educating kids and not worrying about whether we'll have to reduce programming or personnel year over year, because we have sufficient funding to move forward with the program we have, with some incremental improvements as well. Just an update based on what was presented in February. We do have some projected costs that have gone in the what we'd say the right direction. We do constant projections around our out-of-district special education tuition. The projection now is for about $164,000 fewer that we'll need to devote to out-of-district tuition next year. And then our personnel numbers are changing all the time in terms of projecting for next year. And based on an additional retirement and some resignations, we're having a net reduction of $39,000 for our projection for salaries for next year. So all told, a little over $200,000 of an improvement relative to costs for next year. At the same time, we have some increased costs that we needed to put into our updated final recommendation. The first, just some additional custodial supplies, frankly, just the cost of disinfectant wipes, and we use those more than we used to in the past before COVID, of course. Just an additional $5,000 there. A general $10,000 increase to contracted services. Some of the contracts that we're starting to renew for next year are coming in a little bit higher than we anticipated, so we just need a little bit more there to make sure we can cover them. And then the larger portion there is that the tuition rate at Assabet Valley Technical High School is increasing by 9.7%. We were not projecting that high of an increase. The increase is set based on a state formula, and because it's based on what their per pupil expenditure was last year. Those numbers weren't available in February, and they came in higher than expected, and that's for the total number of students we're anticipating will remain at Assabet next year. That will be an extra $47,709. So all told, almost $63,000 in an increased cost projection compared to what we presented to you in February. When I presented to you in February, there were only two sort of new positions that I had recommended, one being a science engineering teacher at Shrewsbury High School, so we could redirect some of the money that otherwise would have been going to vocational technical tuition to make sure we're providing as much access as possible to our Project Lead the Way courses, whether that be in biomedical, engineering. We're working on what that's going to look like based on course enrollment for next year right now. And also a reading specialist at Sherwood Middle School to not only provide direct intervention instruction for students who need it, but also to provide more capacity at that level as we work at a very specific strategic priority, which is to update our instructional practices and curriculum around literacy instruction, reading instruction at the pre-K through 6 level over the coming years. Additionally, again, as you mentioned in your introduction, Ms. Heffernan, the school committee has asked the leadership team to look at what other investments, now that we have a draft strategic plan, what are some investments that could be consequential to help students next year, especially although we continue to improve as we come further out of the pandemic. There is still a lot of need and a lot of demand and things that we need to do for the benefit of our students. So this spreadsheet, which was in your packet, indicates my recommendations for additional strategic investments to be made as part of the fiscal '24 budget. First is to add 2 additional reading specialists at the K-4 level. We currently have 1 reading specialist who also serves as our Title I grant director, Title I funding from the federal government, which provides resources for tutoring for and reading instruction for students. We felt that it was important, for the same reason we were adding at Sherwood, to provide some more capacity at the elementary level. Again, these positions will be responsible for some direct instruction of students using the nomenclature of the tiered system of supports to be that sort of tier 3 instruction of kids who really need some additional intervention to move towards being proficient, but also to have more widespread across the district. Right now, our current reading specialist, Maureen Henry, is responsible for coordinating and organizing and overseeing all of our literacy tutors across all the elementary grade schools. This will spread that out across 3 people and give us more capacity, and also supporting our teaching staff as they undergo a very significant shift in curriculum and instructional practices around literacy. This is something that the leadership team and the elementary leadership team supports wholeheartedly. We think that will be a really good use of funds to advance an important strategic priority. Along the same lines and the same initiative, one-time funds of $50,000 to engage the service of a literacy reading consultant to provide some of that coaching and expertise to our K-4 leaders and educators as we implement this new program. This would be considered sort of a temporary one-time funding for a temporary employee. But we believe that also will help us move forward in as strong a way as possible. The next line there is a to-be-determined expenditure, but it's setting aside funding, again, that would be essentially a redirection of funds that would have gone for tuition for vocational technical high school to our own career and technical education programming. There'll be a report made to the school committee, I believe on May 10th, to provide an update relative to the work we've been doing this year. Dr. Lazat, Mr. Bazidlo, the high school leadership team, in a variety of ways have been looking at what are some ways that we can, again, mitigate the loss of the students who otherwise would have gone to Assabet, that number of students, but also provide for any student at Shrewsbury High School better opportunities relative to career and technical education. And so being able to set aside another $100,000 to invest, and that could be whether or not that's in training, whether or not that's in some type of personnel, whether or not that might be some sort of equipment. That's all to be determined as we do this work. We are awaiting a planning grant from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to be posted around what they call their Innovation Pathways program, which looks like it could be a really nice fit for us. And so, we continue to explore what's going to be the best way for us to support those students in their years at Shrewsbury High School who did not have access to Assabet. But of course, we've always had students who didn't get access to Assabet because they didn't get in. And so it's, finding ways to support students who otherwise wouldn't have gone, and also students who may not have even considered it, but would benefit from those kinds of experiences. After that, we are proposing a $77,000 set aside, again, sort of a one-time expenditure to contract for a safety and security audit for all of our schools. We believe that looking at both at infrastructure and our emergency response practices, we've made a lot of improvements over the years, significant improvements going all the way back to we really re-energized those efforts after the Sandy Hook tragedy. And I think that we continue to do good work, but I think we're at a point where getting an outside expert to come in and look at what we're doing and give us some feedback on we're doing well and what we can do better. We always have to be paying attention to how we can do the best work we possibly can around student and staff safety in our school buildings. The next line item would be about setting aside $25,000 around some sort of contracting for some services around helping us around attendance and residency issues. Post-pandemic, I think we just have had more students struggling with different attendance issues. In times back in the past, there might have been, the perception of someone called like a truant officer, for example. That hasn't really been the approach that, in modern times districts have used. But having some resources to help our registrar with these pieces, there's just a lot of complicated situations where we would definitely benefit from some more support to be able to make sure that we're able to provide the right kind of connections for where we may have students who aren't attending school for one reason or another, and there's good communication around that, and that will help our school leadership teams as well. And then also, we just have the reality that sometimes there are questions about whether a student is eligible to attend our schools or not, and being able to make sure that we're being in a fair way looking at that. We certainly utilize our school resource officers around those kinds of pieces in the police department where that's appropriate, but having some additional opportunities to make sure that we're able to confirm that people are eligible for our services is important. And then finally, there's a set aside of, again, one-time funding for some consultation services to ensure that once we have an approved strategic plan, that the implementation of that plan is strong. And I think we've benefited from having some support around developing that plan. I think the school committee has made it very clear that looking at ways to make sure we have strong metrics and action plans that are being monitored in a way that makes sense and fits with our culture as a school district is important. And I think that the more robust our action plan can be and the more we can be informed by data of whether or not what we're doing is working well or how we can shift our approach if necessary, I think is important and is a good, smart use of funding. So all told, those recommendations total $480,500. And so, it's important to understand the bottom really doesn't affect our bottom line budget in terms of what's being recommended at town meeting. That remains at that 4.75% increase. When you offset the savings that I talked about initially with those additional expenses, there's a net adjustment of just under $340,000. And those dollars would come from the circuit breaker reserve account. We would just utilize more of that account to offset eligible costs. And so you can see in the two green rows there, when I presented to you in February, that initial recommendation projected that we would end next year, so in June of 2024, with just over $2.96 million, which would be about close to 85% of what is the maximum we could carry forward into the fiscal year 25. By making these expenditures for the benefit of our students and our staff and our families, we would reduce that by about 10% to 75% of the projected maximum circuit breaker. So it's about a 10% change in that, based on, it's still defined as what's considered to be a very strong reserve. And I think that's, you're you're balancing that against the opportunity cost of not making the investments that I just went over, and what the impact that would have. And sometimes those have cost implications too, if students need more support down the road, if they don't get support when they're younger, and so forth. So I think they're wise investments to make. And to give some context, the typical circuit breaker reserve we were carrying before the override in 2021 was typically about $500,000. This is still a circuit breaker reserve that's 5 times larger. And 500,000 was not adequate. We were in the margins there because we felt we just didn't want to make any more cuts to what we were doing at the time. But it's still, from my perspective, a comfortable place to be that allows us to deal with unforeseen situations and circumstances without worrying about other things that we're funding, and also looks forward to the future where if we have to, over time, based on economic circumstances, not have as many resources as we'd like, we would have a little more of a reserve to draw on. So the bottom line increase, again, is 4.75%. And that is the recommended budget. You have the full line items in your materials, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the recommendation at this time, and would ask that you vote this evening to make this recommendation to town meeting. Town meeting, for those who don't know, they have the authority to approve the bottom line budget for the school department. The actual line items expenditures is purview of the school committee. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions about this recommendation.
Please, Ms. Fred, start us off.
Just really a couple of comments. I think, this stays true to the agreement we have with the select board around the 4.75 max that we luckily are able to have due to the override from a few years ago. And I also think it ties directly into the new strategic goals and priorities. We've got a roadmap in funding as we look at those two that tie together. And I also want to thank Dr. Sawyer and all of the leadership staff, because there was a lot of collaboration, because we have stability, but that doesn't still mean that it wasn't a process that we had to work through as a group. And there was a lot of collaboration because we wanted to look at that cost-benefit analysis and where is the best place to put these funds, because they still are limited. And I'm glad that this committee advocated for more around literacy and the career and technical education piece, because those are two areas that we are hearing from families and parents that they really are looking for more in. And those one-time costs, including the safety piece, is very important as well. So I'm really pleased with how this all worked out, but it was definitely a collaborative effort between everybody involved, and I fully support this.
Thank you very much. Mr.
Yeah, I support the recommendation. I agree with Ms. Fritz on all points. I think it's nice to be in a position to invest in strategic needs as opposed to trimming around the edges. This is the second full year we've been able to do that. Much thanks to the residents of the town for supporting educational services and all services, really. But I do support the investments in literacy and the mitigation steps that we're taking around vocational. Important for the public to know it's a mitigation effort. It's not something we can replicate. So, but I do support the recommendations as stated.
I also support the recommended budget for the coming fiscal year that is before us. I think it is a responsible budget that adequately supports our priorities overall, and in particular, when you look at the new investments that are recommended, I think that they reflect not only our priorities, but also the shifting landscape that Shrewsbury Public Schools faces. As both of my colleagues have noted, I do want to, in particular, lift up the $100,000 line item dedicated to supporting career and technical education programming. This is a bit different than what we've done in the past. Typically, obviously there's a lot of detail behind all expenditures. This is more of a placeholder for a situation that is evolving and developing. Town meeting was very explicit with this committee last year that they want to see us do absolutely everything within our power to address the loss of access to Assabet. And I think that to build in some funding for what continues to be an evolving situation is appropriate, responsible, and responsive to town meetings. So I support the recommendation before us, and I'm pleased to bring it to town meeting.
Thank you. Please, Ms. Bajaj.
I also support the recommendation wholeheartedly. To echo my colleagues' comments, I'm very pleased that we're going to be able to make these investments in the literacy program to get it off to a very strong start. 3 full-time positions and a consultant to make sure that this program puts its best foot forward. I think it's very important, not only for the literacy program going forward, but also in terms of addressing some pandemic learning loss as well, and to making sure that there's adequate resources for that as well. So again, I echo my colleagues' comments and fully supportive of these recommendations.
And thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I think it goes without saying that without the override agreement of March of 2021, and if folks don't know what we're talking about, you can find it. I just confirmed you can find it on the town's website still. How different that makes our jobs and the ability to actually make some needed investments. And I think of any organization, if you're not investing and trying to improve, then you're just treading water here, and that wouldn't be acceptable to, I hope, any members of our community. So when I look back over the years since that agreement, first it was full day K and redistricting Beal and making a major change around our delivery of elementary services. Last year, well, there were many small things in here too, but again, has been noted a real investment in mental health supports and staffing for what we were seeing as a real problem in our district. And then this year, moving into a space of, again, being driven by the data. We have some challenges around literacy, and for a whole bunch of reasons, I think these investments are smart and targeted, and our strategic planning process has brought to focus a few areas. Certainly, career and technical education, as was noted, has been the need has outpaced the abilities for forever in terms of number of kids who maybe were interested in something like a vocational school. And while I agree, we can't replicate that, just mitigate it. It is also important that $100,000 could be spent in a lot of different ways to support. I think about the career day that was put on in this past week, and while many people are volunteering their time and efforts, when you think about what are the next steps for that and what will come after, I certainly hope we can find some grant opportunities to continue to explore and develop those, and look forward to learning more about that. But it's important that we continue to move forward here, and I'm happy we're putting some dollars towards safety. As a parent and as a community, I would never want any of the experiences we're seeing across the nation to happen here, but that's again important for us to continue to look forward. So I think all of that being said, those critical investments warrant not fully funding circuit breaker, but keeping it at a very healthy reserve at 75%. And so, Dr. Sawyer, I'm certainly also in strong agreement with your recommendation, and really do appreciate the collaboration that it's been over the last many months. We started this budget process quite a long time ago to get to this point tonight. Dr. Sawyer, if you don't have anything else, I'm happy to make a motion to move forward with a vote. If you have nothing further to add at this point. With that, then I would take a motion for the school committee to vote to recommend our fiscal year 2024 town appropriated school budget department of $83,086,622 as presented for town meeting approval.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you so very much. All those in favor could do so with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion passes unanimously. I look forward to town meeting, though I don't remember the date, in May, soon. Our next item up, also within finance and operations on our agenda, is our food service substitute pay rate. We will be taking a vote this evening. In our current tight labor market, the district's food service food service department has had difficulty maintaining a pool of on-call substitute workers. The last time the substitute rate of pay for food service workers was adjusted was in June of 2021, almost 2 years ago. We did receive a memo from Mr. Collins recommending an increase in the current rate in order to maintain enough attractiveness to get a pool of available candidates who are willing and ready when needed. Mr. Collins, I will turn it over to you before we take a vote, and that vote would be to adjust the pay rate from $14.25 to $15.50. Mr. Collins.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I would just echo your comments that it is difficult labor market in order to attract substitutes to our cafeteria program. The other aspect that while it might seem like a large jump, $1.25 incrementally, it's important to, just as you finish the budget discussion, convey that this would have no impact on the operating budget, as this cost is borne by the food service program revenues solely, and that fund is in a solid position in order to afford this substitute pay rate increase. Right now, the pool of substitute candidates is in the range of 1 to 3 available, and on any given day with a full and part-time staff of about 45 members, that it's difficult. What they're finding themselves doing is just kind of shifting staff between schools to cover absences. So this will help, we think, attract a few more candidates and also retain those that have committed to us already.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Collins on this matter? Mr. Collins, for the state fee per hour, what am I looking for? The minimum wage.
Yep.
Help me out. It's now 15 in the state?
It's $15.
So can you explain to those who are listening why it is that we maybe are paying something that one might think is less than minimum wage and how that is possible?
Sure. So the simple answer is the state minimum wage law does not apply to municipalities.
Okay.
Municipalities are exempt from that.
Thank you. It certainly seems like it would be awfully hard to be competitive if we're paying under the minimum wage. With that, if I can ask for a motion that the school committee vote to increase the food service substitute hourly pay rate from $14.25 to $15.50, and that would be effective as of April 17th, 2023.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor can do so with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins.
You're welcome.
And we have another matter for you. Also in finance and operations, we have an acceptance of a gift. Per our school committee policy 911, gifts of more than $5,000 must be formally accepted by the school committee. We have 2 this evening, and we are, of course, very appreciative. Win Waste Innovations, formerly Wheelabrator Technologies, has offered to make a donation of $35,000 with $17,500 allocated for supporting the startup of our Reaching Independence through Supported Employment, also known as our RISE program, and an additional $17,500 allocated for supporting ongoing and future efforts at student career exploration activities and programs. Why don't we start with that one, and then we can explain the second one. The district would like to acknowledge also, if you can help me out, we have a few folks who have been providing some ongoing support to the schools. I noticed you've joined us here. Hello.
Yes.
Good evening.
Thank you. So I would like to thank Don Musiel at Win Waste Technology for the donation of $35,000. They would like to help in any way they can, but he asked that this donation be put towards career exploration pathways and the RISE program. So we are very grateful to that organization. Additionally, we've had some residents, actually retirees, teachers, come forward and give some donations for the upcoming DECA competition in Florida. So we're grateful to those folks. And we have I guess the other one is the class of 22.
Sure. Let me take a vote on this first one, and then we'll
Yes.
move to that one. How about that? Just so we're
Sure.
not be confused. Are there any follow-up questions about Win Waste Innovations? Obviously, we are incredibly appreciative, and those are 2 exciting programs as we continue to grow. If no further questions, then I would take a motion that the school committee vote to accept a gift of $35,000 from Win Waste Innovations with, again, $17,500 allocated to the RISE program, Reaching Independence through Supported Employment, and $17,500 allocated to supporting ongoing and future efforts for student career exploration activities and programs.
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor can do so with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are most appreciative. Thank you. Dr. Lazar, you were trying to say the class of 2022 also is looking to make a donation.
Sure, I could address that one, and that is in Mr. Bazidlo's absence here. Each year, the graduating seniors, typically through their high school years, are doing lots of various activities and raising class funds, and they use those for all of their activities and senior year activities. And then typically they'll have some leftover funds, and those funds, sometimes the class will make a gift. In this case, they've decided to make a gift of $7,500 to support the replacement of mountain bikes as part of the physical education program, Lifetime Fitness Program. And those mountain bikes were originally purchased, I'm not sure, maybe about 10 years ago, through a federal grant of about $1 million. There was a lot of different equipment purchased, and so those bikes have kind of met their end of their useful life, and so this will replace about 10 to 12 of those bikes. They have about 35 total. Some of them have been replaced already, but this would complete the replacement of the final third of those bikes. So appreciative of their thoughts.
I am sure I speak for all of us that we are incredibly appreciative to the class for there are a lot of efforts that go to raising these dollars, and they could be spending them on all sorts of things. But I certainly appreciate their willingness to give back to their school community. I can't believe you can get 10 years out of a bicycle used by high school students, so I'm impressed by that. But if anyone has any questions, we can move forward then that the school committee vote to accept a gift of $7,500 from the Shrewsbury High School class of 2022 to support the replacement of mountain bikes as part of the Lifetime Fitness Physical Education Program at Shrewsbury High School. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor can do so with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Excellent. Please pass along our appreciation, and I'm sure we'll put something pen to paper to them as well. Most appreciative. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
being here. Next item on the agenda is our approval of minutes from the school committee meeting held on March 29th, 2023 were enclosed with our packet. Are there any changes or additions that need to be made? No. Not seeing any, those can be marked as accepted. While we did have an executive session noted on our agenda, we do not need to adjourn. And
Could we just do it for purpose A?
I would love to go to executive session. We will move.
Just to,
We will move to executive session solely for the purposes of addressing Mass General Law 30A 21A7 to comply with an act under the authority of a general or special purpose law or grant an aid requirement for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and releasing executive session minutes. And we will we will then return to an open session only for the purposes of adjourning for the evening. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And a roll call vote is required to go into executive session. Ms. Fritz? Aye. Mr. Wensky?
Aye.
Mr. Palich?
Aye.
Ms. Boucher?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you and good night.